We're back with another weekly-ish installment of the CEO and the Lobster. This week, which we've started off the week with April Fools, so I thought we might have a chat about that and also look at what's happening with Arbitrum, which is relatively big news topically at the moment. So April Fools, always a good chance for some great crypto pranks. Patrick, what have you seen out there? What's your favourite been?
Well, given my reputation, I think the one that jumps off the back was CoinMarketCap renaming themselves to CoinMarketCrab as a way of a tongue-in-cheek joke talking about this crab market hypothesis that's running around at the moment opposed to a bull or a bear market, which I thought was really good. What about yourself? Did you see any that you particularly loved?
There was quite a few fun ones around Bitcoin, proof of hydration, proof of handshake, a few other plays on different networks coming through. The proof of handshake was actually quite a funny one, sort of harking back to trying to put Bitcoin on old school technology where things had to work on a handshake rather than anything more efficient. And there was someone made a nice clip around the EU coming out and saying that personal wallets had to only be able to be accessed, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, i.e. putting wallets back on banking hours, which was a good little dig at the banking sector. On that one, though, actually, there's some interesting news coming out from New Zealand at the moment that we are moving to 7-day banking payments, which is, a big step forward for our clunky old banking system that currently only operates Monday to Friday. So it's not there yet. Not sure how it'll affect public holidays. So we have Easter coming up this weekend, and for both New Zealand and Australia, there will be no payments on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday because the banks are off on holiday. So that's one to watch out for. Any other good April Fools that you saw out on the market?
So I actually personally, one of our competitors, SwiftX, is rebranding to Comic Sans and the Bin Chicken. I love that. They're based in Brisbane, Australia, where I'm originally from, and yeah, it's a very, very Brisbane, Australian thing. I love it. So yeah, shout out to those guys. And yeah, the
Nice.
particular
I
one,
love a good bin chicken. Australian Bird of the Year last year, right?
yeah, it needs to be on our coat of arms. Like forget an emu, it needs to be a bin chicken. Yeah, I guess also the other one, and you briefly touched it, was that proof of handshake thing. I think it was a really good tongue-in-cheek joke that highlights, we have all these conversations like proof of stake or proof of work or all of these other ones. The old school system works on proof of handshake. Like that's actually how like financial transactions work in our current world. So every every proof of whatever in the crypto space automatically is one-upping that. And I thought it was just a really, really nice way to, kind of throw some shade, let's just say that, throw some shade back at the traditional banking system. Yeah, yeah.
And we even got in amongst it. Easy Crypto with announcing the listing of Percoin as part of our love of all things CryptoKitty and Cats Online. We every year when it comes around to April Fools, I think someone at Easy Crypto posts on our Slack channel on the 31st of March going, should we do something for April Fools? So maybe next year we can get our act together and do a slightly bigger joke on you all. So watch out for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I love a good pun. I love a good joke. I'm very pro that. Something that's not an April Fool's joke, but I kind of wish it was, is
Mm.
the Arbitrum story. Have you been watching that much, Janine?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting one, right? I saw listened to a great podcast with Arbitrum founders on Empire podcast a few weeks ago when the airdrop just happened. Everything's glowing. It's all sounding really good. They're hitting the ground with this airdrop and people are, loving what they're doing with their layer 2 project. And then things came to a bit of a grinding halt this week with AIP1, so their improvement protocol 1. Do you want to take us through the gist of that one, Patrick?
Yeah, so the TLDR is Arbitrum is a layer 2 solution kind of built on top of Ethereum to utilize the strengths of Ethereum, but to kind of have its own special rule set so you can do things in a different way, potentially more quicker or cheaper. It's just like something that's built on and leveraging Ethereum's technology. One of the biggest projects that are coming up in the world in that layer 2 space, some really, really cool mathematics coming on there, been running for about 18 months and they've stuffed it. So they've recently launched a DAO, a decentralized organization, which was meant to kind of govern it, kind of give control of this project back to the community, because the community in this space is really what drives value. It's that network effect. And they did it as handing out a token. This token, I think currently in New Zealand dollars, it's about $2 a token. Most people got 625 tokens if they'd previously used the Arbitrum network, currently trading about $1,200 NZD. And then these tokens that you hold, you get to vote on proposals. The first proposal, Arbitrum Improvement Protocol 1, was a very long document, and some people noticed in there was some really, really fine text, some really, really concerning text saying that, first and foremost, that 750 million Arbitrum tokens, so about $1 billion USD, was to be put towards this foundation's administrative budget and essentially with very little oversight. But there was also an additional clause, and this is only something I found out recently, that the upper limit of that was actually 3.5 billion Arbitrum tokens of a total of 10 billion Arbitrum tokens. So we're looking at a range between 7.5% of the supply to 35% of the supply going towards this essentially centralized entity that the DAO doesn't really have control over. It was done in a really shady way. And then what made this so much worse is the vote failed. It failed by a lot. It failed by 70.
And that's not unexpected, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
This gets me to one of the big questions that I have about this is like, so you're founders, you've got a company, you're going to turn it into a DAO, or at least turn components of it into a DAO. And by doing that, you're giving away control, you're giving away ownership, you're giving away voting, you're giving away control. And the founders of ARB, like, they thought this through, and they actually wanted their community to have majority control. So they put 56% of the tokens and the votes either into individuals' wallets through airdrops or into the DAO itself. And they had 44% for themselves, the founding team, future staff, and VCs. And we can talk more about that later, about those entities and who should and shouldn't have tokens and why. But the ethos there is good, of the majority ownership and the majority control goes to the community. And then, like, what is it, less than 2 weeks after they do this airdrop, they come out with this proposal. And this is the bit that really confuses me, is that they had 100% of the control and 100% of all tokens before they issued them to the public. Then they issue them, and it's like, did they not think through how much they needed for running the business, or how, when they wanted unlocks to happen? Because they've basically created this major issue for themselves, this major schism in the community and a lack of trust by putting this proposal out. Whereas if they'd made this, effectively done the same thing, but before the airdrop, and said, hey, this many tokens are going to go to this entity for this reason, not locked, they wouldn't have got the same backlash. So it sort of seems to belie a real misunderstanding of how DAOs work, which might actually be leading on to the point you're about to make about what happened after the proposal failed. So everyone votes on the proposal, the majority say no, which means the proposal can't go ahead, except
they kind of assumed that before the vote had even happened that it would pass, and they started making actions on it. So first of all, these tokens were actually transferred. But second of all, 10 million tokens have actually been sold. So the better part of, I think it's about 15 million USD, and then an additional 40 million tokens have been loaned out from this allocation that hasn't actually been given to them yet, because they kind of assumed that it would pass. And it seems like they're in this really, really rocky position that they kind of have all these obligations that they have to meet because they've assumed that this will pass, and now that that hasn't passed, it's kind of in this limbo. It'll be really, really interesting to see, because I think at the core, Off-Chain Labs, the company that originally built Arbitrum before they've handed it over to this DAO, was venture capitalist backed. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but these people are participants because they get something out of it. What role, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this, Janine, as somebody who's dealt with venture capitalists with EC. The role that venture capitalists have played, and do you think they've made the situation worse? Do you think they've been good for this Arbitrum overall? Like, how have they fitted into this, and how have they made it more complex?
Yeah, I think VCs, it's easy for VCs to get a bad rap, and particularly from, participants in the system, users, the community. Everyone kind of likes to hate on VCs, right? They're just these money hungry, power grabbing, people who are just after the bottom line dollar. But it's important to realize that VCs play a really significant role in enabling projects to build and develop and scale. So, and we as participants in the system, we often benefit from that by getting access to services that wouldn't have been able to build without VC funding, or we're getting them at a subsidized rate because, when a company's burning runway, it means they're spending money, they're spending more than they're making in revenues from sales. So, Uber, for example, we've all been using Uber for years, and Uber has not been covering its own costs through the fees that we're paying for it. It's been funded out of effectively VCs and investors. Whether Uber's a good thing or not, other story. But so similarly with Arbitrum, like, having VCs put funding in has enabled them to scale faster, build bigger, create better products than they could have done if they were just trying to get the money out of the users of the ecosystem. So VCs do fill a very important role. There's a lot of speculation with this instance in particular that what's gone on behind the scenes is that Arbitrum, through the airdrop, hasn't given enough back to VCs or hasn't let them realize their return quick enough. Or sorry, maybe that it's not liquid enough because a lot of tokens were locked in for a year, and that's sort of been the result here. And there's reasons why VCs want to get their money back, right? That's how they work. They invest, they have a certain time horizon they invest on, they want to realize profits and cash flows so they can return it to their investors and reinvest back into new startups and help build and grow that ecosystem.
So it's obviously a very complicated situation. It's obviously an evolving situation as well. How does Arbitrum move forward, I guess, is my main question here. Like, have they just shot themselves in the foot? Is there actually a path to like regain some of that trust they had with the community?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's so bizarre that they've done it in this order, right? Like they could have just made things so much simpler for themselves by deciding before the airdrop or before the token issue how they wanted it all to land. But look, I mean, what's happened has happened. I'll definitely be watching this closely because I think it's a good learning for DAOs and for crypto communities. I think probably 2 points that sort of jump out at me from this is one is that for Arbitrum, like the community is key. If you alienate your community, if you disenfranchise them, if you make them mistrust you, that is hard to come back from. Not impossible, but you need to really work to earn that trust. So I think they're going to have to work very closely with their community, admit where things have gone not great and sort of show what they're going to do in future to make things better. And that brings me on to the point too, that this is a really interesting case study in DAOs, right? Like you've got this pure form of DAO, which is completely on chain and nothing can happen that isn't, in a very pure form of DAO, this would never have been able to happen, that they could have started acting on a proposal that hadn't yet been approved. But then as DAOs get closer and closer to the real world and need to have things like companies and bank accounts and stuff that don't live on chain, then you have this murky area where what the community is voting on and what actually happens in real life aren't forced. They're not hard coded together like they are with fully on chain stuff. And so for people participating in DAOs, building DAOs, that's a really important dynamic to be aware of, and particularly as someone who's getting into a DAO and thinking that you have this level of control. Ultimately, if things are happening off chain, there is going to be a dilution of control or an element of trust that you need to have that the people who are holding the off chain positions, like bank accounts, will only do what is the dynamics that is sort of required of them from what's happening on chain, which again, we didn't see in this scenario. I hope Arbitrum can pull back from it. I hope they can make things right with their community, but it's an interesting one to watch how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good way to highlight it. It's just this overlap between trustless systems and systems that are primarily based on trust, and where they merge, there's going to be friction. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how it plays out. For those who want to get involved, for those who are involved and want to get out, just to mention, Easy Crypto is now actually great segue, I know. Easy Crypto is actually just listed the Arbitrum token. So yeah, if people want to get involved, if they want to be part of this quite evolving story, we're more than happy. Yeah, come talk to us. We're more than happy to help facilitate that. But also for people who are wanting to step away, saying, "Hey, this is a bit too much for us," yeah, we can also help with that. So yeah, reach out. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, let us know, because yeah, we're always here to help. Were there any other final closing points you kind of had on the whole Arbitrum situation, Janine?
No, I'm just going to be watching it with interest. How about you? Thoughts
Yeah.
on the way out?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be involved in it, and I'm definitely, let's just say
By involved, you mean you got free money in the airdrop?
What's the rule? You don't talk about crypto with your friends, family, or colleagues. I think you've broken that rule a few times, actually. Yeah, well, look, I'm definitely very nervous. I'll say that much. My trust has been broken in them. I'll just, yeah, to be completely blunt. So I think that kind of wraps us up for this week. As always, yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. And yeah, thanks for watching another CEO on the Lobster. I hope you guys are enjoying these. If you've got any feedback or comments, let us know. And yeah, until next time, have a good one all.